Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our second panel discussion today on the state of the television business. Like Linda said, I'm Donna Pinestri, Managing Director of Television for Variety. I am so thrilled to be able to introduce today our esteemed panel of television executives. Up first, do we have an order? Yes, Michael Wright. Michael Wright is the Executive Vice President and Head of Programming for TBS, TNT, and Turner Classics. He's responsible for all programming, scheduling for TBS and TNT, including original series and specials, as well as original content for the network's digital extensions. Michael has a busy next few weeks as he prepares for the anticipated return of Conan to late-night television on TBS November 8th. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Don.
A little plug. Up next, we have Mark Stern. Mark Stern is the Executive Vice President of Original Programming for Sci-Fi and co-head of original content for Universal Cable Productions. Mark oversees all original programming for the channel, including scripted, drama, comedy, series, long-form, and alternative reality. Welcome, Mark. David Nevins. While David may be new to the original programming panel circuit, he's certainly not new to our business. David is an Emmy Award-winning producer and veteran network studio programming executive. He was recently named President of Entertainment at Showtime Networks. Prior to joining Showtime, he served as the president of Imagine Television, where he oversaw development, production, and acted as executive producer on all Imagine series. Some of the shows under his reign were Friday Night Lights, 24, Arrested Development, Parenthood, and the new NBC mid-season, Friends with Benefits. Welcome. Last, we have John Landgraf. John is the president and general manager of FX Networks, where he oversees the entertainment business and operations of FX, Fox Movie Channel, and FX Productions. Under his direction over the last few years, FX has the most scripted original dramas and comedies on air than any other basic cable network. And last but not least, moderating our panel today is our own Stu Levine. Stu is assistant managing editor of Variety and has covered the film and television beat for over 13 years during his reign at Variety. Welcome, guys. Thanks. Take it away. Thank you.
Freaks in a room together. Thank you. Thank you, Donna. I guess I would start out the panel with you guys are all in the cable business. But what happened in the broadcast a few weeks ago seemed really interesting to me. Everybody launched their new shows basically in 1 week. And Lone Star, which is one of the most critically acclaimed shows, basically opened and died in 1 week. From a cable perspective, you're looking across the dial, kind of how do you feel about that? And what would you maybe suggest to those guys over there? Michael, let me start with you.
Thanks. I would never presume to suggest how they should program their networks. I think it's self-evident that it's pretty tough in a very crowded television landscape to launch that much original programming and expect all of the good stuff to be able to break through. I think we benefit, certainly at Turner, and I think some of my peers here, from the ability to be a bit more patient and stay with shows. I'm a firm believer that most of these shows don't find their creative stride until well into the first season, if not the second. So if you have a business imperative to cancel early, so be it, but you're almost certainly canceling a show before you've really put on the best version of it.
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, are we going down the line?
Yeah,
okay.
go down the line. I think it's a good question.
I completely agree with Michael. You know what? I think Lone Star is probably the best example of a great cable show that was maybe not meant for broadcast. It's also, you can also question whether the timing is right in terms of it trying to find a mass audience for the subject matter, but you could easily see that show on FX. And see it thrive on a network like that as opposed to a more mainstream mass appeal network that really needs to bring in major numbers. And I definitely agree with Michael that a show like that needs to breathe, right? It's not going to just come out of the gate. And I thought the pilot was excellent, but it's a really good example, I think, of a cable show on a broadcast network.
I mean, David, from the broadcast side,
I've definitely been there with critically acclaimed, ratings challenged television. So, look, the question of premiere week comes up every year. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? I think there's some distinction between if you have a strong, from the broadcast perspective, you have a strong, stable schedule and you can protect your shows and you can place them strategically, you got a better shot. There's some advantages to the full blast of premiere week when you're coming from behind, when you don't have as much stability. I mean, it has not hurt. It's clearly not hurt CBS because they've sort of been able to place their new stuff fairly strategically and get it off the ground pretty successfully. It's harder when you're kind of coming from behind and when you're taking a risk on a new show that is different and doesn't, is a challenging show like Lone Star. There might have been other ways to do it, but I fortunately don't have that problem anymore.
John, I mean, the talk on that the next day after the ratings came out was saying, well, this would be a great show for FX. What was your kind of thought about that when that kind of buzz started happening?
I think one of the most difficult decisions anybody has to make as a programmer, and we all have to make it, is to try to figure out when a show has been rejected by the audience versus when a show has been disadvantaged via scheduling or timing or marketing or something like that. And I really can't presume to second guess anybody else's decision about that. I've been on the right side of that decision, saying if I just have patience with this show, it'll build into a hit, and I've been on the wrong side of that. Mm-hmm. I think one thing that's gotten much, much more difficult for all of our jobs is that it used to be you put a show on the air and the audience either watched it or they missed it. That was the state of television for generations, and now nobody has to watch anything until the second season. They can wait and see whether it's a hit, whether the critics like it, whether it develops creatively, as Michael suggests. They can buy the DVD or watch it on VOD over the season, catch up with it. And so trying to make an assessment, therefore, of whether something has commercial merit and whether an audience will catch up with it is maddening. You don't even get the data. I don't even know if they know yet how many people watch Lone Star on DVR.
Yeah.
So it just makes it.
They're probably just getting. Right. Last week they got their
+7.
DVR +7.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was already dead.
There was a story in the Wall Street Journal last week talking about so much good cable programming out there. I think it said it was like 1,400 new shows that are out there right now per half hour, per
1,400
episode.
good shows?
Per half hour, per episode. Like if one show is 13 episodes, that's 13.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is there too much out there? I mean, this weekend I sat and I watched 12 hours of television. And those are the shows that I wanted to watch. Is there just too much programming out there that you can't get that big number you once got? And how do you solve that problem? Just too much good stuff. Is that a good problem to have?
Concerned about your social life.
That's a good point.
Oh, you're looking at me. I think that much television disadvantages certainly the fringe players, and I don't mean the fringe in terms of how many homes you're in or how many. It's fringe shows that are struggling to get off the bubble and be noticed. When there's that much competition, you better have a pretty spectacularly engaging premise, cast, and marketing campaign to break through. I think that the market will have a way of correcting itself, as it often does. And I think that when we get to the point where we have too much television on, more will fail. And I think that's what, it'll inevitably correct itself. I suspect personally, I put it this way, as a programmer, there's more than I want to compete against right now.
Yeah.
I think some of us, when we got into the original programming game 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was never an easy playing field, but it was certainly less cluttered than it is now.
I think that's actually, I think that number is actually a bit falsely inflated, because I think what we're also experiencing is that you don't have the ability to pick up shows the way you used to in syndication. That a lot of these, and maybe because of where the broadcast networks are, the number of shows that get to 5 or 6 seasons are much less. So what used to drive cable networks, which was maybe 1 or 2 original shows and then lots and lots of reruns of other shows, is not really the model that works that well anymore. And in fact, what's driving our ratings without question is original hours, period. So it pushes you to do more original hours. And yet, we're all, I definitely agree that we're all in much more of a competitive state than we used to be. It's not like cable can just eat broadcast lunch anymore. We're now eating each other's lunches, and we're having to be competitive and schedule against each other and be careful of where we're going with each other in ways that I think we never had to before. And we're driven to be more broad in terms of our ratings and what we're trying to attract in terms of our demos. So that's all. I think we're basically just maturing in terms of the game that we're playing, and I think that's a natural state of evolution. So it does require you to have to be more disciplined in terms of, as we've just talked about, keep a show on the air, make sure that you're promoting it right, and we have the flexibility that I think, thank God we do, to let shows find their audience and vice versa, in a way that broadcast maybe doesn't have that. So I think all those things conspire, but I don't know that it's as dire as it sounds on paper.
I mean, cable has usually the 12 or 13 episode model, which seems to work really well. And rarely do you see a cable show canceled after 3 or 4 episodes because financially probably wouldn't make sense to do that.
Right.
Should broadcast take on that model, or are they kind of stuck in that 22, 8 to 11, or can they shift at any point, do you
I
think?
think their real estate's too valuable. I mean, I think you could see that once they become true dual revenue stream businesses as their retransmission consent money comes online. Right now, where their primary revenue comes from one revenue stream, i.e. marketing, advertising, if they're not carrying the weight, the real estate's just too valuable to spend money, basically, because they haven't produced 13 episodes. Sometimes we've actually produced the whole 13 episodes before they go on the air.
Right.
The broadcast, that's never the case, given the cycle of how they develop and when they do their upfront,
Yeah, I mean, I think there can be occasional shorter special events, but they're still in the business of maximizing advertising revenue. And as John says, until the retransmission money becomes a significant portion of their revenue, they've got to make as much money as they can, given their schedule. So that means if a show's not working, it's really costing you. I'm in a fundamentally different business. I'm in a fundamentally different business than these guys as well. We don't sell advertising. In a world where there is this much programming out there and you're wasting your weekend watching 14 hours, I don't think it's a waste, but you really should get out a little more
12,
often.
it was 12, it wasn't 14.
I think 6 hours is fine. But we need to stay premium, and we're trying to get people to write a monthly subscription check. It's a very different thing. So what's premium and what's special and what's worth writing a check for every month changes as programming and different types of programming become more and more ubiquitous. I think that's my BlackBerry, so I'm going to turn it off.
remember too, Stu, that by my count, and I read Amy's article, Chozik's article that you cited, but by my count, when The Shield premiered in 2002, there were about 40 original scripted series on premium and basic cable. That's inclusive of Nick at Night and ABC Family and Disney Channel, and everyone was, and I counted about 140 this year between. So 40 to 140 is a huge increase. But think about how many less hours of scripted original programming the broadcast networks are doing between 2002 and 2011. I bet the amount of original scripted programming is relatively constant, given that we tend to make fewer episodes with a series order. It might have gone up a little, but I don't think it's gone up all that much. On the other hand, we all have very successful businesses where we've grown our businesses financially by selling our brands and our original programming. It's definitely becoming a crowded field, and you can see, like anything, it's a curve, and the curve will flatten out, and eventually the increase will tail out. I personally think we're near the top of the curve. There may be a little bit more, but I don't think there's going to be a lot more original programming in total, and then it'll flatten out.
With that being said, with so much original programming out there, you guys are listening to pitches. How much different stuff is out there? I mean, we have our cop shows, we have our medical shows, but yet, as Michael, as Rizzoli and Isles did terrifically well this summer, there's still room for a good cop show. And for Showtime, they have to write a check, so your stuff has to be, top quality. What are you listening for? What are you looking for in those pitches?
Well, there's no limit on creativity. So there's an unlimited field of people who will bring us stuff, and there is an unlimited field of new, fresh ways to make television. So it's sort of up to us to, push past the obvious and the tired and find it. But I think it is an exciting time. I'm brand new to this side, and I'm still full of the blush of this is still fun and we can do anything, and any kind of harebrained idea I have, I can pursue. I feel very unlimited at the moment. I'm sure 18 months from now I'll feel a little bit more, I'll see those boundaries a little bit more clearly. But you know, there's pressure to not just keep doing the same thing, and there are a lot of people, there are a lot of smart people trying to do it as well. So, but that's the game, and truly that was probably the game. Even when there was only 3 networks, it was always sort of press for the next new exciting thing,
Right.
and that's what gets you up in the
You
morning.
know what's amazing about cable? Like when David was running Imagine, you know, part of his job was maybe to develop a program that was perfect for one particular broadcaster, but it was great if you had multiple different broadcasters bidding on something because you ended up with a big commitment and a better deal. I've been in this job for 7 years. You've been in this job at least that long, and I've never competed for a project with Michael or Mark or Showtime. Not once have we ever bid on the same project. So it's such a fundamentally different model than broadcast.
That's as
where-
far as the guests we've passed on things and said, send it to him, send it to him.
And vice versa.
Been correct. Yeah.
Really? I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
No.
Mark, I mean, sci-fi, these guys more general network, sci-fi certainly has a brand, and it certainly has, well, you guys have a brand as well, but it certainly has a genre that people think about. When you're taking pitches, do you like to have people to be in that genre? Do you like them to kind of think more outside the box when they're coming to you? Kind of what's
You know,
your
it really
thought process?
depends. And we're interesting in that we rebranded about a year or so ago, a year and a half ago, and we are now, and we still embrace the genre. We rebranded for a number of different reasons, but one is that I'm a firm believer, to the point of being a little crazy about it, that Battlestar Galactica on the science fiction channel was a limiting factor for that show in a way that it never should have been, and that if it had been on another network, it would have really broken out in a way it deserved to. And I think the idea that we're limited in terms of people's perception of the genre versus the actual behavior around the genre, which is it is a mass genre. You don't have to look any farther than Avatar to see that. So we're actually in this interesting mode of now embracing a slightly new brand, or at least we changed the spelling of our name. It sounds the same, from sci-fi to sci-fi. But
Seemed to work.
it's actually done very well in terms of letting people in. So I think that's been a really interesting process for us in that regard, is how to broaden out. But in regards to whether we like only talk to sci-fi geeks, no, actually, I think what's really exciting is we're developing a medical drama with Michael Chernuchin, and he doesn't know from genre, and so you basically bring them in. What they do really well is what you want, which is strong characters in an interesting dynamic setting. And then, yeah, we'll certainly bring in the genre stuff and surround them with people. But Jack Kenny, who is the showrunner on Warehouse 13, had never done a genre show before. Just came over with this really strong sense of character. So we love doing that.
David, before you had mentioned retransmission fees, which seems to be in the news these days. Obviously, you and Dish have had issues, now Fox and Cablevision are having issues. And both network and satellite cable companies can make their certain points, but it always seems like the viewer gets stuck in the middle. They're the one who's going to lose out on this programming. They're going to lose out on the sports. They're losing out on a lot of stuff. And now the government might get involved as well. Is there a way to do these negotiations to make everyone happy but not have the consumer stuck in the middle and have him be the big loser after all?
You know, these are big tectonic shifts in how business is getting done. So there's going to be some collateral. I mean, Showtime we've had those negotiations on an ongoing basis for the last, for the history of the network for the last 35, 40 years. Oh, no, last 25 years. I think it is a big deal and is changing the way business, and whenever you try to change business models, there's going to be friction. So
It's going to be frustrating for you, John, because some of your best shows that people can't see.
Yeah, the Dish customer can't see Sons of Anarchy and Sunny right now. But I guess I would say that the existence and health of the 4 broadcasters, I think, is really, really necessary for the health of the overall ecosystem. We need off-network programming. I think TBS, TNT, Sci-Fi, USA all need off-network programming. Broadcast can sustain. They can get to 100 episodes faster. They can create a hit that has more mass audience that can function really well. So I think it's absolutely necessary for them to get fairly compensated, all 4 broadcasters, for the level of sports and programming they have. And I think ultimately once we're through the tectonic shift of that, it'll be better for the ecosystem. That's what I think.
Michael?
I completely agree. I don't believe in the cable versus broadcast argument. I think it's false. It is a symbiotic relationship. We need them, they need us. The better they do, the better for the television viewer, the better for all of us. And I do think this whole notion of retrans and renegotiations, at the end of the day, it comes down to must-have content. So it just keeps affirming the same truth that informs television regardless of the argument at hand. These guys have great programming, people are going to want their networks on, and they will settle their argument.
Talking about the viewers, 18 to 49 demo has been kind of the magic number for many years now. Yet CBS will continually tell you, because they get the most viewers, that's really all about total viewers. And there seems to be a shift now from 18 to 49 more to 25 to 54. Do you guys see those numbers as important as 18 to 49? Is 18 to 49 still the magic number, or is it more total viewers? Kind of what's your sense
We sell
of
different demos.
Yeah.
They sell 18 to 49 and 18 to 34 on TBS and 25 to 54
Yeah,
on
we sell a
TNT.
portfolio. The nature of our business model is we've got different networks targeting different demos. TNT is 25 to 54, TBS 18 to 49, True 18 to 34, so we're playing a portfolio. It's really based on your ability to monetize a particular demo.
And I sell a
That's simple.
subscription, so I don't care how old you are.
As long as you have a credit card.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you look at our revenue as basic cable networks as being roughly halfly derived from advertising and half derived from affiliate sales, it doesn't matter how old the customer is for affiliate sales, but for advertising it does. So half your business is dependent on whether that advertiser is within a saleable demo. Half your revenue is not. So both matter.
I mean, we're definitely trying to age our audience down. So 18 to 49 is, in terms of progression in that demo, is really important to us. I think what's probably even more important is the cumed L7 numbers and C3. And it's very, I'll tell you just from my own perspective, it's very difficult to get off the crack pipe of the overnights and the nationals and looking at those numbers and not saying, give it 2.5 weeks, and then you really talk about what your real numbers are,
Right.
because everyone likes those numbers. But that is ultimately where it comes down to, is looking at the DVRs.
You know,
Right.
people talk about you can't monetize Live Plus 7. It's really not true, because Live Plus 7 is a true measurement of a truly engaging show, which you can monetize from a CPM differential aspect. So there are all kinds of metrics going into this that aren't obvious. I think it's the challenge you guys face as you try to report on this.
Yeah.
It's like there are 18 different scorecards, and you know what? There's validity to all of them. So.
I mean, that's the issue, is business has gotten more complicated. The ways that all these companies get paid has gotten more complicated, and that's coincided with a news cycle that's gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. So there's real tension there. But
Yeah. The +7 numbers are never as sexy as the overnight numbers, but they're actually more meaningful.
Right.
Yeah, very relevant.
I mean, certainly, you know, we're in a business that is advertiser supported, and everyone's used to advertising. So you ask demographic questions, and of course I get demographic numbers, but it could not be any more irrelevant to
Right.
me, other than, you know, sort of maintaining the health of the brand, maintaining male-female balance, and all those sorts of things. But it could not. It's completely irrelevant to our business.
Speaking of your business, Bob Greenblatt obviously did a phenomenal job at Showtime before you arrived. What's been, and you're coming from more of the broadcast side, what's been kind of the big learning curve for you going to Showtime?
Well, there's one fundamental fact, which I'm learning sort of every day, which is there is no direct tie between your programming and revenue, and everybody else, and it has a million implications every day, and so I'm starting to absorb it, many of which are very liberating implications, and we're fortunately right now a very profitable business, but there's no direct tie between any show I'm going to put on the air and how much money we're going to make. So that is, it changes everything. It changes the way I think about press, about marketing, about how to handle our programming.
What would you say, you guys, are your toughest decisions during the day? Is it greenlighting a show? Is it casting? Is it listening to pitches? Is it possibly, listening to producers, giving notes? Kind of give us what's a typical day in life?
Well, I look at it both original programming and acquisitions. I live in that space. So for me, I think the single toughest part of the job is trying to project forward 24 months to 3 years. Any decision you're making now for today, you're too late. So you have to anticipate. And I think that's where you have to sort of take your head out of the here and now sometimes, try to think forward, for which there is no data, there is no guarantee.
Right.
What makes the job fun, but that's the hard part.
Think about this, if Michael or I buy an acquired series today, we're going to get it 3 years from now, and we're going to make a 7-year commitment to the series. So we're basically trying to run a pro forma and look at the programming environment of 2021 to imagine who's going to be watching live or live C3 television and what the ratings are going to be.
What new platform has emerged between now and then?
And you're making hundreds of million or sometimes billion-dollar bets based on living 10 years in the future. And what we're experiencing today, all of us, is based on decisions we made 2 and 3 years ago. There's not a single thing any of us can do today to make our business any better tomorrow. We're working on making our business better. You know, if it's an original program, it might be a year from now. Or if it's an acquired program, it's 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Mark?
I would say the hardest thing about this job is, without question, is time management. I mean, there's a lot, right? It comes at you all the time. We were just talking about before we came out here about how small our staffs are, which they are. And I think one of the hallmarks of what we do is that we are kind of light on our feet and we're very in touch. But we're also, I will speak for everyone and say that we're complete micromanagerial, attention to detail freaks. And so those things are kind of at odds, right? When you're trying to also manage a portfolio of lots of different things that are in all sorts of different stages, and in some cases you're also producing it as well. It gets very difficult to know what you should be paying attention to and what you should not be, and to actually keep that kind of horizon view of what else should we be doing that beyond the minutia of dailies and pilots and outlines and everything else.
Do you like to have a lot of interface with your showrunners? Do you kind of let that do you delegate that?
Probably more interface than they would like me to
He
have.
did say micromanager.
I don't think it's micromanaging, but they seem to. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that.
David, tough part for the typical day?
Well, I actually like Michael's answer. I think it's true. Is that, sort of trying to project out to the future. And when I'm making programming decisions, it's sort of what I said before, that there's no revenue attached to any particular programming decision. Pick up a second season of this show, order a new show, add something new to the schedule. There's cost associated with it. There's no particular revenue associated with it. So again, you have to sort of you have to believe that somehow it's going to enhance the brand. Somehow it's going to be excellent enough that it's going to be a hit. There's a plan. So there's less sort of quantifiable data attached to any programming decision that I make than a broadcaster makes. Because if you're a broadcaster, you say I'm going to stick this show after NCIS, and I think I can deliver a 3.2 rating, and that 3.2 is, you can put a number against that 3.2, and you're bullshitting when you say I think I can get a 3.2, but there's reasonable ways to sort of make that assertion, and that's completely irrelevant to me. So it's much more ineffable. I'm making bets on ideas, on writing, and then on the people and there's a million variables in that.
You know what, I'll also say too, I don't actually know Mark's background, but I would hazard we probably all moved up, through creative process basically to the point where we all have significant business responsibilities. And so we swim in data all day, every day. We swim in math, we deal with finance, we deal with legal, and yet what we defend is something very insubstantial, something very ephemeral. And if we become arrogant about it or we're too defensive, we suck at it. But if we're not stubborn and we don't defend occasionally something that looks almost cockeyed on the face of it, because every time the closer happens, or Rizzoli on Isles happens, or Battlestar Galactica happens, or Dexter happens, or Sons of Anarchy happens, it's kind of a miracle. And so it's this odd thing where you have to be a rational business person, but you have to be a little bit irrational.
Yeah.
And then figuring out where to be rational, where to be irrational is complicated.
Although it's really fun when you have a project like that you really believe in, that you can really, I mean, I had definitely had some very pitched battles over Battlestar, and weird conversations over like some of the most bizarre things, like drowning babies and stuff. But you know, when you
Pro or
really,
con?
in that case, I was pro. But I think that, you know, when you have something that you really believe in, I think that's actually your job, right? That's why you've been hired, is to creatively defend something that you really believe in, that you think is going to be a success. And hopefully you're working with people that value that opinion, that really do want you to be that advocate, because which ones are you going to get up on the table for and which ones aren't you?
Right.
Not that table, but, you know, a table that could support your way.
You had mentioned, David, that sometimes you don't have all the information that you really need, yet it seems like the trend lately has been to renew shows sometimes after one episode, sometimes even after before the pilot even airs. You've seen that happen sometimes. You guys just did Sons of Anarchy midway through. 5 episodes, which is a little early for you guys, a little bit. Is that a trend that we're seeing? Is that to show enthusiasm and to show confidence in your showrunner? Is it just more about the numbers?
To be honest, I'm trying to change that trend. It just seems silly, and so
Why are people
I
doing
mean, when you know that it's when a show has gone out there, when you know that it's working for you, and know it's working with your audience, you pick it up. But the press stunt of we picked it up before it even aired, which I think is largely a and believe me, there are moments that the press stunt is worth it. You need that bang. I'm not above it, but in general, it seems a little silly to me. So for our company, I'm trying to curb that trend.
Now, you had done that, was it for Nurse Jackie? I think you did after the first season. You picked it up first.
Yeah, that was Bob, and so consequently, the Big C premiered well, and they're like, "Where's our pickup? Where's our pickup? Come on!" So I held off for a handful of weeks till we knew what the numbers were stabilizing, and made I think a more reasonable. It was about 5 weeks in.
You could set a not so great trend if the show is on the bubble, but your people are looking for a pickup. And
yeah,
deals.
I'm pushing back against that.
The truth is, and my truth anyway, is that there are a very small handful of shows that are clear breakout winners that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out. But it's equally true that there are only a handful of shows that are clearly not going to make it. The vast majority of shows that we're looking at, you can make an argument either way. And the only times we've ever made that sort of quick pickup was not for a press stunt. When we looked at it and said, man, that was the dumbest schedule we could have ever put it into. We're not going to learn anything over the next 5-6 weeks. So we renewed into the show just to say, you know what, let's show faith in the show and acknowledge our own scheduling error and give it a second season. But for the most part, I could argue 75-80% of these shows, especially in cable, you could argue it either way. So why not, if you believe in the show, give them the benefit of the doubt?
What's your guys' feelings about Hulu? Steve Levitan came out about a month ago saying that we're kind of giving content away just for the sake of eyeballs. You can make an argument either way. Kind of, do you feel like Hulu is a good thing going towards the future, or as Steve says, are we just giving the shows away and not monetizing them just to get viewers?
I'm sympathetic with the Levitan point of view on that because, certainly, as I felt that way as a producer. I think conditioning people to get high quality, excellent stuff for free is not good. And particularly now that I'm in a subscription business, I'm all for, and I think Hulu themselves are going through a bit of a change of business model. But I'm in the subscription business, so my business is about making good, really good, expensive stuff and getting people to pay for it. And so, to the extent that Hulu moves in that direction, I'm all in favor of it. There's plenty of times where you want to give stuff for free, you want to, sampling, marketing, but let's call it, let's make sure it's about sampling and marketing,
right,
and getting attention, because eventually, to give high quality, expensive stuff, we need people to pay for it.
Hulu's certainly been a good show for you, John, for Sunny.
I think it did help drive sampling on Sunny. But I think ultimately, the scripted programming, scripted content, whether it's feature films or scripted series of any kind, cannot be profitable based on a single window, whether that's theatrical exhibition or the commercial exhibition that happens on our channels. They need to sell through multiple windows. So I think the key to the current flux in the business model is figuring out a windowing strategy that allows some degree of exclusivity for those of us who actually create the content to drive sampling, to drive viewership, to drive advertising, to drive subscription rates. And then after that, we have to figure out a windowing strategy. I mean, ultimately, if everything that broadcast creates has the sprockets run out of it by the time Michael gets it or the time I get it, it's going to have a very dire implication on the largest general entertainment basic cable network. So that's not to say that there won't be over-the-top services like Hulu, but I think what's happening in the business right now is people are trying to figure out the windowing strategy, and it's just in flux right now.
I just completely echo what they're saying. Nothing's for free, especially really expensive to produce film and television shows. And I think we're creating a false promise. You know, eventually, the business will catch up with that, and you'll be watching a cat chasing a ball of string for free. I mean, you got to figure out a way to monetize it realistically. So, yeah, I obviously am a big proponent of, not just because I work with a company, but I like the TV Everywhere concept, because I think it services, what's driving this is a very clear consumer need. I want to watch what I want to watch, where I want to watch it, when I want to watch it. Great, as long as you're paying for it, you know, on some level, that works. But nothing is free.
For the three basic cablers, you're all under bigger umbrellas. Michael's under Turner. You guys, Mark is under NBC Universal, soon to be Comcast NBC Universal. You're under Fox. Do you kind of like being under that shell? Do you feel like you're protected by those guys? That maybe sometimes the broadcast, well, not necessarily for Michael, but the broadcast nets kind of get the glare more, and you guys can maybe sneak under the radar a little bit?
I think from a distribution standpoint, it's vital. I mean, I think Turner's heft and weight and just the sheer size of that company and the number of channels they have, or the fact that we're all connected to broadcast networks, give our channels an enormous amount of leverage in the marketplace that they just wouldn't have if we weren't part of larger organizations. I think independent cable programmers are struggling much more to get.
I think you see that also when it comes to promotion, right? We talked at the very top about how much more competitive the landscape is. So even with broadcast in a bit more of the sunset years, or not what it used to be, to get a 30-second promo spot during Sunday Night Football for one of our shows, to have that kind of cross-promotional opportunity is gold. Or even to run a show, especially for us, where we're speaking to a very specific audience, and we're trying to broaden out, to have something on Bravo or USA is really helpful, and they'll run episodes of our shows. And I think even going way back to Queer Eye, I think that's what gave Bravo its launch, was running Queer Eye on NBC.
Yeah.
So I think it's been great.
It seems like reality is a great financial model if it works. If you get a show that hits, it's terrific. You have it on Sci-Fi. Yeah, you had it with 30 Days, I remember, which was a really good show. And Michael, you guys, are you thinking about going to the reality business?
Yeah, as we're all discussing here today, as exclusivity and original content becomes more important, you have to look at it. The challenge of reality has been repeatability. Under our business model, we like that we can run leverage 10 times and it's still performing decently, you know, in its 7th, 8th, 9th run. The challenge with most reality has been it kind of wears out after a couple of runs, but we think we're getting around to solving it. I do think that you will eventually see us going there.
Tell them about the show I tried to sell you, Michael.
It was a fantastic show he tried to sell me. Extraordinarily well produced.
I actually did produce a reality pilot for Michael, I imagine. He claims to be still considering. I don't know.
Do you see yourself getting back in the reality business at all?
For the right show. I think what's difficult for us is, you know, we're in some ways a little bit more brand-wise, like HBO or Showtime, although we're kind of a hybrid, because I wouldn't turn down Michael's broad, big audiences. And if you look at what Showtime and HBO have done in the so-called reality genre, it's more documentary style. And documentary style really doesn't rate very well. So part of our challenge is, how would we put a sort of a traditional reality show, how would we connect that to our brand? 30 Days seemed to connect to our brand pretty well, but we struggle. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if we had Deadliest Catch, it would probably work pretty well on our air. So never say never. Never, you know. We're not, you know, those people that do reality programming, I got to say, they're pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Discovery, TLC, A&E, they're really good at
How do
it.
you know
I think you're not looking at farther than history. I mean, look at what happened to history over the last year in terms of vaulting into like number 4 network over 2 reality shows. I mean, that's the promise of reality.
Also, the appeal of the programming, you just feel it. Any sort of notion that this was a fad, I mean, who's still saying that? This is so central. Anybody with children here, you know, can tell you as well. It is here to stay. And it's also vibrant, wonderful programming when it's done right.
Michael, I'm sorry, Mark, how do you know the right balance between, for you guys, because you have a nice balance between original and scripted and reality. How do you kind of keep that balance? Do you feel like you want to stay where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're moving aggressively into more and more reality, but we're also moving into more and more scripted too. I think the number of hours overall are just going up. I think it is about trying to find the balance, and part of that is also in how you program your nights. So we have a Wednesday night block of reality. We're now going to be doing a Thursday night block, and then we look at our scripted in terms of the other nights of the week. So you want to be careful because it is a dangerous thing to get too in love with, and at the expense of your scripted. And you talk about kind of talking to the finance guys. It's like, okay, an hour of unscripted programming is $300,000 to $500,000. An hour of scripted is, you know, 1 million plus. Sometimes your unscripted gets better ratings than your scripted, so you find yourself in those conversations about why are we even bothering to do scripted?
Right.
And that's when you have to kind of get up on the table.
May I ask any questions out there? Sure, right in the middle back there. Why don't you just stand up if you don't mind?
Thanks. One of the issues that you guys are obviously dealing with is increasing programming costs, while at the same time your revenue probably isn't growing at the same level as your programming costs. How are you guys dealing with that on a daily basis, and how's that kind of affecting your decisions when it relates to running your businesses?
I'll say our revenue actually has outstripped our programming costs. That won't happen forever, but I think one of the things we've tried to do is figure out how to produce more low-cost programming. You know, we have our own in-house studio. The guy that runs it is sitting in the back of the room. We do very low-cost comedies. We own them. We sell them. We sell the DVDs. We benefit from the foreign revenue. We've syndicated one of them, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, to Comedy Central. So we've tried to open up other revenue streams and figured out ways to make programming that in the aggregate is less expensive, because the truth of the matter is I don't think any of us pay for our shows on an advertising-only basis. So a lot of the reason we make these shows is to create affiliate value, and because we have two revenue streams. And if you want more, to have a bigger brand, you got to figure out how to make it more efficiently and how to come up with other ways of paying for it.
I mean, to John's point, you manage costs, but you also, there is still a fairly big differential in a cable CPM versus a broadcast CPM, and that is a growth target, certainly. And I think also amortization is your friend. One great acquired series that